Good afternoon, everyone. I, Mudita Raj, Assistant Professor, Delhi Metropolitan Education, welcome you all to the 13th episode of the Vibrant India series. I also welcome all our viewers who are watching us live on Facebook. Vibrant India series is an initiative of DME Media School for celebrating 75 years of India's independence. This series will be a year-long exercise. As a part of this series, we invite inspiring personalities for online talk, interview, and interaction with our students. The invited personalities for this series are from all walks of life and from all parts of the country. And today, our special guest is Mr. Augustine Valiant, communication strategist, social mobilizer, writer, publisher, and communication trainer with over 4 decades of experience. I welcome you, sir. I would now like to take a moment and introduce Delhi Metropolitan Education. DME is an A-grade premier educational institute affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, New Delhi, and approved by Bar Council of India. The institute offers BBA, BA LLB with BCI approval and BA JMC programs. DME believes in imparting world-class education to its students while training them to develop and enhance their skills. This education and training enables them in taking up challenges in the industry and creating a space for themselves with their competence and vigor. DME Media School is one of the most promising media institutes in the country. It offers BA in journalism and mass communication. It is recognized as a school focused on the growth of its faculty and students through academic and co-curricular activities. Major flagship events and initiatives of the school include BG Varghese Guest Lecture Series, Peer-to-Peer FDP, International Film Festival, SIFI, International Conference ICANN, and Vritika, Convention of Media Students. And newly added to this list is VIZ, Vibrant India Series. It is our pleasure to introduce you to the guest, Mr. Augustine Valiant, the personality of 13th episode of the VIS series. I request Abhishek Mishra, student DME Media School, to please introduce our guest of the day.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Augustine Valiant has a diverse experience of 45 years as a communication strategist, social mobilizer, writer, publisher, and communication trainer. He has served UNICEF for 23 years as a communication specialist, working in the most challenging states of India. He has served as a media advisor to the Government of India. Sir is a trained journalist and joined the Voluntary Health Association of India as a health communication in 1975 and was its head of department publications for 10 years. He also headed the Health Accessories for All (HAFA) in the Catholic Health Association. In VHAI, he edited the Health for Millions for 10 years, and in CHAI, he founded the Health Action. He is currently the India chairperson for the Geneva-based Nonviolence Project Foundation. Sir is a passionate advocate of child rights. He is also the founder director of the Asian Center for Entertainment Education and is working on linking creative communities, film, television, radio, folk to prioritize of our times. He is also associated with the New Millennium Listeners Institute and the Global Network of Community Colleges as founder director. Sir is also the chairperson of Mindshare Yuva. He is also the editor of Unilink and Link for the UNICEF Pensioners Group in India. Sir is a mentor and guide to people who want to be a part of the gig economy.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Sir, it is an honor to have you. We have prepared an AV. We would like to see a few glimpses from your life. sir, for joining us today. It is indeed an honor to host you. I now request Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, to please welcome the guest.
Thank you, Mudita. Welcome everybody in this 13th episode of Vibrant India series. We launched this digital program on August 9 on the anniversary of Quit India movement. Vibrant India series is a tribute to all those people who made supreme sacrifices for the independence of our motherland. India will be completing 75 years of independence next year. We have started celebrations this year only. This program has been launched as a part of these celebrations. In the first episode of Vibrant India series, our guest was Brigadier P.K. Saxena, who served the country in 2 wars. Following this, Madam Bhavreen Kandhari, a known environment activist, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, senior media educator and column writer, Dr. Nakul Parashar, science communicator and director of Vigyan Prasad, Dr. Monisha Behel, social activist from the Northeast, based in Dedpur, Mr. Rajesh Badal, senior journalist, writer, filmmaker and broadcaster, Colonel R.K. Durgan, professor and advisor at MIT School of Communication, MIT University, Noida, Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, the pioneer of animation industry in India, based in Mumbai, Madam Tripti S. Singhal, an entrepreneur and a startup consultant, and Captain Dharmveer Singh, a versatile personality and an army man. Madam Jyotika Kalra, former lawyer, author, and currently member of National Human Rights Commission, and Mr. Sanjay Banerjee, a sports journalist, broadcaster, and commentator, our guest. In the making of this country, we all play our roles as a soldier, doctor, engineer, educator, journalist, lawyer, environmentalist, as science communicator, filmmaker, as human rights protector, and as social activist. So, we are very grateful to Mr. Augustine Valle because he is contributing as a creation of God, that is children. We have one of such personality with us in this episode. So welcome Mr. Augustine Valle in the Vibrant India series. Welcome you, sir, and welcome all of you present here.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School and creator and ideator of Viz, the Vibrant India series, to address the gathering and take the program forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mudita. So it's a matter of great pride and privilege that we have today with us Mr. Augustine Valle, who is a known communicator in the communication circuits, in the circuits of journalism and media education, because he has a versatile personality and he has been working in so diverse fields at the national and international level that all those who work in these areas know as to how passionately, how dedicatedly he has been serving these areas. And as it has already been pointed out, he is working with the children for their well-being, for their upliftment and all. So, and he is such a person all through his life that he has always been motivating whosoever comes across in his life at any level. So this whole series is about these personalities only who inspires. So with this objective only, we have created this program, Vibrant India series, wherein we are inviting such kind of personalities to talk to the students and tell the students all such things from their life, on their life journey, and the work that they have done all in life, which could be the points of inspiration to the young people, because the country of the future lies in the hands of the young people. So they need to be told the right things so that they can choose a right path. So welcome, Mr. Augustine Valliere in this program. And as the first segment of the program, which says, that you are requested to speak about your life, about your whole life journey, the important aspects of their life, or the important milestones in your life, wherein you would have got success, sometime that would not have been, that pleasant thing, some challenges you would have faced, some problems you would have faced, but then you would have tried to overcome all those problems to further pave your way and to do all that which you wanted to do to the service of the mankind. So I will request Mr. Augustine to please take over and start telling us all about your life journey. We are eager to listen to you.
Thank you. I would like to start with my maybe my college days. I would actually like to start with Kapil Dev. I've met Kapil Dev only for 2 minutes. But in that 2 minutes, and in fact, in one sentence, he summarized all what I learned 3 years learning Indian systems of philosophy. By the way, that was my subject in college. And how he summarized it was like this. He asked me, what is your designation in UNICEF? And I said, I am the advocacy and partnership specialist. So he looked at me in some kind of disbelief, and he said, partnership? I said, yes. He said, sir, cricket is all about partnership. When partnerships end, cricket ends. And in that beautiful sentence, Kapil summarized what India has taught for 7,000 years, that is Advaita. So our life depends on how do you manage your partnerships? How long do your partnerships last? Every morning we get up and new partnerships turn up. And some come, some go. So that is what India is all about. That's what cricket is about, partnerships. Having said that, I must tell you, so that's the one lesson I took from my college days, that Advaita. And there is another thing which I took, and this came from on October 2nd in 1969. As I told you, I was a philosophy student, and since we are a philosophy student, and it was the Gandhi centenary year, Gandhi's birth centenary year. So they had invited one of the most respected Catholic theologians to speak on Gandhi. And he did a beautiful speech, wonderful speech, and he's one of the gentlest, deepest human beings I have met, Father Samuel Ryan. But, as students go, when you are 18, 19, you like to irritate your professors. So one of our students asked him this question. He said, sir, Father, you speak so much about Gandhi, but he was not a Catholic. He was not baptized. Will he go to heaven? So Father had a very quick and, in fact, a very, very angry answer. What he said was, who are you to draw the boundaries of God's garden? Now, that's a very, very remarkable question. And as that question held on to my life, throughout my life, I've held on to it. Who am I to draw the boundaries of God's garden? So we cannot exclude anybody. You don't decide where God's garden begins and where it ends. That's him, not us. So these were kind of two things I take away from my college days, Advaita, and the right and the duty not to exclude anyone. Now, if you students were looking for one more lesson from my life, and I would say run away from home, because that's what I did. After my graduation, I was away I am from Kerala, but I was away in Sandal Paganas. I was in a school teaching 500 children, of whom 250 had not seen a bus, forget about any other modern amenity, because children came from the interior of the area, They attended the school, they went back. They never even saw a main road. And but those children in that 1 year taught me a lot about what was highlighted to speak about when I spoke about development. I spoke about ecology, I spoke about justice, I spoke about human rights, I speak about children's rights, but most of it came from those children. So in that cultural shock and economic shock, that I learned a lot, and I think the basis of my the foundation of my life was laid there. But from Sandalpakanas, I came to Delhi. And when I came to Delhi, my intention was to become a prophet. And I thought the way of becoming a prophet was to become a journalist. So I opted for a course which was wonderful. Wonderful because that course taught you, if you want to swim, get into the water and swim. So my course was conducted in such a way, almost every single leading journalist in practicing in Delhi that day was my teacher. And what they did was to give me assignments. And some of my teachers included Prabha Dutt. Many of you would know who she is, Barkha Dutt's mother, who Prabhaji was then with Hindustan Times. We had D. Sen, we had Prakash Rao of Statesman, we had G.S. Bhargav, we had Krishnakant of Samachar. I mean, it went on like that. The best of, and we had Rasia Ismail, who later became my colleague and my boss. So we had some of the finest journalists giving assignments. So that's how. So again, if you really want to be a writer, if you really want to be a media person, get into the water and do swim. That would be my fourth lesson. And one of the greatest things that, one of the most beautiful things I did as an young journalist was to interview Mother Teresa. And this was when she had just won the Jawaharlal Nehru International Award for Peace and Understanding, and Peace and International Understanding. And when I met her, one of the hottest subjects at that time used to be the Naxalite movement. A lot of violent young people out there. The country was still trying to make up its mind about what to do with them. And so I asked Mother Teresa, like, what did you think about the Naxalites? So she told me, I have never met them, but they have met my sisters. And she said when Calcutta was flooded, a number of, her sisters were gone for relief work, and a number of young men came in a boat, helped them in every way. And when they were leaving, they said they are Marxist-Leninists. And after they left, so then Mother Teresa said, I guess they are also seeking love, but in a different way. So that statement. So when I wrote up that piece, that was not the internet days, and we couldn't really, but yet I had a link to a feature agency based in New York. So I sent it across to them, and it was published in about 27 countries. So it was for a young journalist, that was a big breakthrough. But then, of course, I worked with V.K. Krishna Menon, I worked with George Fernandez, and paid the price too. The emergency came, our office was raided, and I had nowhere to go. I had no, so dal roti ki sawal tha. So I joined an organization called the Voluntary Health Association of India. And when I joined the Voluntary Health Association of India was a network of hospitals, dispensaries, and community health programs across India, thousands of them. So when I joined, I was also asked to edit something called the Health for the Millions. So I asked the executive director, whom do I write for? There is something called, when I was in a newspaper, I knew whom to write for, but when in an organization like that, I didn't know. And he said this remarkable sentence to me, which also guided me a lot in my life. He said, write for the sister by the Hurricane Lam. What he was trying to tell me was there are health workers out there where there is no electricity, trying to read by the, by a hurricane lamp or an earthen or a kerosene lamp. So it's that person we should write for. And that one statement has influenced a lot my writing style. I think I write smaller sentences, I write simple sentences, and I write action sentences. So that was one. And then, but I carried some of my journalist habits into that organization. So when I was told to interview somebody, I was very aggressive. This somebody was a poor woman who was training health workers in Orissa. So, but I questioned her about the methodology, about the content, about everything else. And I kind of sounded suspicious of everything she said. So when my interview was over, she stood up and I stood up. And she looked at me with a lot of compassion. And she said, the technology, the methodology, the content, all that is important, Augustine. But what is most important in a training is after you have trained, has the way that person looks at the world changed? And after the training, has the way the world looks at that person changed? Now that was a great lesson and a great summing about training. And came from somebody to whom I had been more aggressive than necessary. But at the Voluntary Health Association of India, one of the greatest opportunity was to produce simple books and booklets and flashcards and flip charts and film strips for all of India. So we published in some of our books in about 17 languages. We published nearly 400 items. But what is also important was a lot of our books were bought by UNICEF for government. So we've reached all across India. But our second biggest buyer was the armed forces. So if the armed forces are healthy, I had a small role in that. The health education was provided by my books. And so as my next biggest customer was the railways. And the fourth biggest customer was UPASI, the United Planters Association of India. So wherever health was being spoken about, our books were in handy, and a lot of people were. But what was most beautiful about our books was that anyone could order it from anywhere by BPP. So they didn't even have to send money. We would send it by parcel, and they could collect it, paying the postman. So this was, I believe, was a great service. So we not only brought, we also took care of distribution. And then I heard this very strange invitation from the government of India, whether I would like to be on an advisory role to the Department of Women and Child Development, then department, now ministry. And I wondered why me, because there was DVP, there was PIB, there was All India Radio, there were all this media. So why Augustine? So they said, no, they all will have to do their duty and they will do it. So it's not, we don't want you to replace them. What we want you to do is to tell us how to communicate to mothers. Now, I thought that was a great compliment. So I took up that position. I worked very closely with people like S.Y. Qureshi, learned a lot from the government setup, and I learned one big truth about government. The government is not what we think it is. The government is as good as the officer you meet on that day. So some are good, some are bad, some are ugly, but some are really good. So when you go to the government, remember this, there's no such thing as one government. It's as good as the person you meet on that day. And then I joined UNICEF. And when I joined UNICEF, I mean, before that, I was an admirer of this. The Colossus was somebody called James Grant, who was born in China, brought up in India, and he was an American, but he was the executive director of UNICEF. And his unflinching and incredible belief in communication and communication methodologies, that children must be visible, that children should be in the minds of people and in the hearts of people who take decisions. So he invented everything that he can invent, and he challenged all of us, and we all accepted that challenge. And so it became a great, challenge to work under the leadership of Jim Grant to take his battle along. But also that was the time India was taking a turning point. We had the national missions, if you remember. And one particular mission, the National Mission on Immunization, was dedicated as a as the memorial, living memorial to a prime minister who had just been martyred. No, that was a great challenge because immunizing children meant, reaching out to every child, every home. Now that was a huge communication challenge. We hired the best professional agencies possible. We did the best research possible. We had Hindustan Thompson working with us at that time, who had won major competition and one thing. And I also in that process learned a lot about behavior change communication. But what is important was I joined UNICEF in 88 and 89, the Convention of the Rights of Children came. And the Convention of the Rights of Children was in the making for about 100 years, and it finally took shape. But the entire world were signatory to it, and all but 2 countries ratified the convention. So it was and UNICEF was given the responsibility of taking that convention to people. So I was duty bound to do that, and I considered that as a major challenge to me. And CRC, the Convention of the Rights of Children, became my Bible and my Gita and my Quran. So I took that on. But then I arrived at a conclusion which totally liberated me. That conclusion was that children pay my salary, and children still pay my pension. So this, that belief that it is not bosses in New York, it is not bosses in Delhi, it is not bosses above me that mattered, it was children. And I had to do whatever is good for children. And when you are that committed to children, and when you believe that children pay your salary, there is something that children demand from you. You know what children demand from you is, as you are 2 years, we should be willing to listen to children. And that is what we as adults are not willing to do. We either discount them, we either disparage them, or we don't, we are silent. I'm sorry, we don't hear what they say, but children have a lot to say. And children have a lot of wisdom to say. So I created something like 14 platforms from which children can talk. Some already existing platforms I try to adopt for children, some I founded. So that I think is my major, most satisfying thing I did. I had children's parliaments, I had child reporters. Not all of them I discovered or invented, but I found them and adapted them. I took them further wherever I was, and so did many of my colleagues. So, that children pay my salary, that phrase I still keep repeating. And that was a great liberating thing, that freed me from everybody who was an impediment. I cared a hood for bureaucrats. I could cared a hood for my bosses, of course, so I believed in, it should be children and children. And so that was my my big liberating moment, you could say. I worked in UP, I worked in Bihar. And when I went to UP, most people said, after 3 years in Delhi, you should be going international. So I told him I have gone international. It is the United Nations. So I said, it is the United States of Uttar Pradesh I'm working in. I said, you come to UP and see the variety, and see the diversity of UP and the languages spoken, the culture of UP. I said, you are an international post. And I also added, if children are UP, where do you go? So I was very comfortable working in UP. Then after 6 months, we are supposed to take a change. So I did that change. I moved to Bihar. I went to the Republic of Bihar, then consisted also Jharkhand. But, honestly, there is no district in UP, Bihar or Jharkhand which I have not visited, where I have not sat down and talked to children. Sorry, where I have not sat down and listened to children. So that I think as my, something which I carry home. And one of the things was, one young lady then taught me how to brainstorm with children, because she had a PhD in brainstorming. And so I learned from her, and we brainstormed a lot with children, and they have amazing things to say. And if you don't tell me what they have to say, I'll give you one example. 60 kilometers away from Agra, we had 40 children. We are brainstorming with 40 children. And we asked them what they think is the most basic, most fundamental right of a child. It was children to answer. And my job was to now keep the adults, away from children, that children say what they want and not prompted by adults. The children took about 45 minutes of intense consultation among themselves, and they had their own method of consulting, and they did that. And then they came out with a conclusion, which when I ask the experts on children all over the world, they don't give me this conclusion. But when I tell them, no, that is not what it is children who said this to me, and they say, oh my God, how accurate, how right. And what children told me was this, that the most basic right of a child is to maternal nutrition, that their mother should be fed well when they are pregnant or before. He said, otherwise the children become LBW, low birth weight. So they are out even before they are born, before they come to the crease. So this became very, very, so that's what children are capable of. We given to them, leave to them, and they will tell you lots of things that are worth doing, worth experimenting with. And then, one young lady came to me with a lot of Bollywood connections. And she said, will I give her some films to do from UNICEF? So I told her, when I can afford Shyam Benegal, why would I hire her? So she said, she was, of course, didn't like what I said. But then she started talking generally about films, and she spoke very highly of Smita Patil. So I asked her, would some artists be willing to donate their time in the memory of Smita Patil? So she said, let me go back to Bombay and check. She did. And I got some of the finest, most recognized Bollywood or serial faces to speak in honor of Smita Patil. And I only asked one shift from them. So we created about 15 television spots. And if you are, since you are the age of that age, you must have seen from 1990 to 99, the television prime time were only those sports, mostly those sports. The sports that we created, of course, nobody took credit. UNICEF did not take credit. I did not take credit. It came as from Health Ministry of Health through Yuddhodarshan. But those were the sports you saw, and it was super prime time. So one day when I met somebody in Doordarshan, I asked him, how much is super prime time worth? They said 27 minutes of super prime time is worth $1 million US. And I said, I got it for a whole year. How great. So that is, so when you ask people, can you do something? They may not do it for us. They may not do it for children, but for somebody like Smita Patil, they would do it. So think about that. Keep this as a strategy in your mind. So that was one. Then there was a very famous doctor who refused to work with us because he said he never works with the government. And so I told him I didn't want him to work with the government. I only wanted him to work with the Panchayat members, ask them whether they would tell whether he would tell the Panchayat members that the vaccine is already in their the refrigerators of their sub-center and PSC. What would they take their children to there? So this man was so impressed, and he was a leading lion. So one day he came home to my house, and then he discussed a strategy, which resulted in all of Lions contributing to declaring March 16th as the Measles Minus Day. And to date, they campaign on that day against the measles, one of the things that maim and kill children across the globe. So this is from a doctor who totally refused to work with us, and so that's another major lesson I would like to tell you. No is not a no. You need to rework that argument. And then we had a children's parliament we had many actually. We had a children's parliament hosted in the Legislative Council of Complex of Bihar, and we had invited Gulzar Saab to come there. So Gulzar came there, and we told him that he will not be speaking because it is children's parliament and only children speak. So, and he said, but at the end of it, children might ask 3 or 4 of us to speak, and if the children did ask you, then you may be asked to speak, otherwise you will not speak. So Gulzar Sir said, that's okay. So we finished children's parliament. Then I asked children, would you like any one of us to respond to anything that you said? So they took 5 names, and one of which was Gulzar. So he spoke. But what was more impressive was the next day he went to Bombay and Mumbai, and he told the media that I went to Patna and learned how to respect children, how to respect children's views. So those were some of our contributions. There are lots of things I can boast about, but I think I will stop it here. Before I stop, I might tell you the sweetest thing I ever heard about myself was from a 13-year-old girl in Begusarai. And Begusarai, if you don't know where it is from where Kanhaiya comes. And so in Begu, what this girl did was she had come for children's parliament, and she was on her, she had her dinner, and she was with a group of girls, and they were about to say goodbye. They were kind of saying goodbye to me. So another girl asked me, sir, where do you live? Aap kahan rehte hai? So I was going to give her an honest answer that I live in 30 Patliputra colony, but before I could say that, the other girl said, tumhe nahi malum, sir bachon ke dil mein rehte hai. So that, I believe, was the ultimate compliment ever paid to me, and I would like to live up to that. If I did live in my hearts and minds of some children, that would be great. And because of me, if the children lived in the media, I would be very nice. This is about media. I have conducted a lot of media consultations. I have never conducted a media sensitization. I never wanted to sensitize media. I only wanted to consult them. And the only thing I used to tell people was, what media says is what people think. So, you listen to them, listen to media. And a lot of journalists have spoken to me very frankly. And I have always approached the media people. I have said this story from Mahabharata to them. He said, I come as Pandava, not as Kaurav. I don't want your Fauj. I don't want tomorrow's news story. I don't want you to highlight what I said today to you, but I want you. Bhagavan, aap niche utar ke aao, aap chaliye Kurukshetra, aap hamare saath ladiye. So that's what Pandavas told Krishna, and that's what I used to tell media. It's a consultation, and I want you with me. How you write it, when you write it, that's not, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about tomorrow's publicity. I'm worried about that you being with us. You understand what we are doing. I might add just one more thing. We ran a major polio campaign. All of you know that we are part of that. And the turning point in polio is very important. The turning point in polio was beginning. We began us first speaking about resistant families and resistant communities. But one day, we had some enlightenment. We stopped talking about resistant communities and resistant families. We started talking about underserved communities and underserved families. That day, the polio campaign changed. So we are looking for who are underserved. They may be this community, they may be that community, and they may be. And the enormous amount of people who joined that campaign, from Amitabh Bachchan to Sharmila Tagore to Ravi Shastri too, they've all walked with us into many of things, Sohail Ali Khan, all of them. But the most amazing of all that was Farooq Sheikh. Because Farooq Sheikh also was an Islamic theologian. So he added argument, everything for us. So next time when you feel like, accusing a community or generalizing a community, remember this. It is an underserved community. So if we can take that stand and try to find more ways of loving them, moral ways of serving them, they will be with us. So this is what one big lesson that polio has taught us. Unfortunately, in fighting with COVID, we forgot that principle. We still spoke about that community being this community being that, and that meeting doing this. No, what we should have told was that's an underserved community. They don't know. So go after them, teach them, let them know, then let them do what, So that is the big lesson I learned from polio. And I'm very happy that I was part of the polio campaign, because there was a time every day 1,000 Indian children used to be polio victims. There was a time one of the UP districts alone used to bring 1,000 cases. So from that we come to 0 cases. That's not a joke. That's something. So I think I'll stop here. Whatever you ask, I'll be able to answer. I've met a lot of very happy people, a lot of things. Since I started with Kapil Dev, I must end with Sachin Tendulkar. Sachin was we invited the entire Indian cricket team to interact with HIV-affected women in Bangalore. So all of them had come. And there were no VIPs. They were equal. The HIV-affected women and the Indian cricketers were equals. And so as the program was about to end, I took the mic and I gave it to Sachin and said, would you like to say something? And now he had no briefing. He had no instructions what to say. There was no script. So Sachin went up and said something like this, and which I think was most beautiful. What he said was this: we are privileged to play a game that people love. And since we are playing a game that people love, and because of what we say, people will save their lives, we must say it again and again. And we must say it often and often. So this is what Sachin said from out of his mind. We didn't write it for him. That was not a script. So I began with Kapil, I end with Sachin. I leave it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Augustine. Now the important thing that we would like to ask you, since you are addressing all young people who are at the crossroads of their life, in the sense that this is the time that they need to decide where to go, what to do in life, which career is to opt for, and so on and so forth. And going by your journey, the things that you have done in your life, you have been switching over from this side to that side. Obviously, one common thing remained, that you were associated with communication, but you were working at different platforms, working for different organizations. So my question to you is that whether you ever thought before starting your journey that which career you will be opting for, what exactly you will be doing in your life, or it happened just like that? And if you can tell these young people how they take up decisions regarding their career and life.
I know before I get into that, I should say something about media and journalists together. See, there will never be an honest media house, because they have to bring in their money. So they will be serving somebody, this side or that side, etc. But there will always be some honest journalists, and they will give their life to get the truth. So you need to be very clear on this. So it is not the media houses or anything, but whether you want to be an honest journalist who would stand up for justice, for truth, for, this is the first question that you have to make up. There is a lot of glitter and jazz around. I remember journalists lying in queue for one particular actor whose plaster was to be removed. So they were waiting with cameras there because he happened to be a lover of Aishwarya Rai. You can waste your time like that. You can go and there because that is celebrity stuff. But there are things that we can do, bring honesty. I had maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but while I was in my first year of with UNICEF in Delhi, there was a cholera episode. There is a cholera epidemic right here in eastern Delhi. And people were dying, and we came to know that when we tried to impress Delhi administration to say there is an epidemic, we need to act. And nobody acted. They said, "Nahi, nahi, monsoon mein hota hai." So then the Hindustan Times, I think, came out with a headline, 346 deaths, not enough for Delhi administration. And next day, the Prime Minister, who had just come back from a foreign trip, decided to visit East Delhi. And he had to walk through, and he had his gum boots, he had to walk through many feet of slush. So all that was on the only television, then on the news channel. And suddenly there was an epidemic. So those things are only possible when a newspaper takes up causes like that. Otherwise, all those people would have died. But within a week, we are able to contain that epidemic because there was media attention, there was this thing. So having said that, now which one do I choose? There are two choices. One is, if you look at it, today IPL, what you call, Kohli will play and he will hit a ball in some direction. And tomorrow somebody will write about it. But that person's writing about will not change that hit, nor the result of that game. So that is one kind of journalism, you report. There is another kind of journalism, because of you write, somewhere a mother saves a child's life. Somewhere somebody invests money in children, or that kind of journalism would make a difference to the world. So that's the first difference that you must recognize. You can do a journalism which is reporting. You can do a journalism which is prophetic, which can move the situation, change the world. And you need to look at it. And when I joined the Voluntary Health Association, when I had told them 3 months, emergency hai isliye aa raha hu, when emergency is over, I'll go back to my now, which is journalism. But I stayed there 10 years because one surgeon who had thrown away his knife to say India needs not surgery but health education kept telling me, because of what you write, a mother will save her. Unknown to you, a mother will save a child's life. And that attracted to me. So then we are talking about something called behavior change journalism. And behavior change journalism is something which is not just an art, it's also science. So then we need to get to scientifically get into what we do. We need to know what the science of it is. We need to know about how. But those who know science don't know how to communicate. So you got a good, good lecturer or professor of a medical college, they will give his lecture notes, which nobody understands. So that's your imagination, your language skills come. So, but when both of you combine, it becomes an astounding partnership, the partnership that Kapil Dev spoke about. So that's what we should aim at. Never go in as I know everything kind of a journalist. There are people to be spoken to. There are people who can tell you so much. Take it, go with them. And in fact, wherever UNICEF, wherever I was posted, to the health officer, I said, we are a tune engine. To the education officer, I said, we are a tune engine. And that's how we function. So we have to be tune engines.
Yeah, but sir, you talked about health education and you have worked a lot in the area of health education or the health sector. And since this COVID-19 has struck since last year, almost everybody now has understood the importance of health and the issues related to health, the health infrastructure, the health education, the necessary communication to reach out to the people as to what all precautions need to be taken, the importance of vaccination and all. So compared to the time when you were working in the health sector and today's time, how much you feel more emphasis should be laid on health education in the contemporary scenario, and what will you suggest to the young people, what all they should do to take care of this aspect, the health, so that we have a bright future?
I want to impress upon the all young and bright journalists here. At no stage has India taken health seriously. Don't mistake all this for a serious commitment to health. There has been very low investments. There has been very poor management of health systems. And like Mrs. Gandhi once said, doctors get trained here that people don't sneeze in England. They get trained, they go away. And but the worst tragedy of public health is this, that if you get an ailment, or your child or your wife, whoever gets, one illness is enough to send majority of our people into a debt trap. Because the kind of money we have to shell out each time somebody falls seriously is horrendous. I married a woman who was working in Germany, and I went and stayed with her. And for her, whenever she fell ill with a very good German salary, whenever she fell ill, all she had to do was to go to the doctor, take a prescription, and go to the medical shop. And whether the doctor prescribed 15 drugs or 20 drugs, she paid only half a mark. She paid only 1 mark to the medical. But in India, if you fall ill, and my wife was recently in ICU for 45 days, I know what I paid through. And I don't know how the poor people survive here. So it is, oops, is India's problem, the out-of-pocket spending. So please write about it. The government must invest more in health and more in taking away that burden away from people. People sell their land, people sell their, take money from money lenders, because this whole situation is very emotional. Somebody is dying, and they buy unnecessary drugs, they get into unnecessary surgeries, unnecessary operations. So please do not think that COVID has changed anything, health is being taken seriously. No, health is not being seriously taken by India. 75 years have gone by. I am not blaming this party or that party, but we have not taken health seriously, and we have not taken education seriously. So that is something which all of you should fight for, because that is what is holding us back, that our children don't grow up, so all our health is and unfortunately a very, very sad story. It's a tragedy.
Yeah. Sir, you have been working for children so long, and while working with children, what is that thing which keeps you always moving, that you are so passionately, so dedicatedly are to the task of the welfare of the children? I mean, what is your motivation to do this all?
If you ask me my motivation, I can actually tell this through another story, somebody else's motivation. When I joined UNICEF, my wife and child, they were both very happy. They said 5-day week. Those days India did not have 5-day week. So they said, dad will be home, and, we'll go for long drives and all that. But it never happened that way. Because what happens is, and I was in many places the public face of UNICEF. So very often what used to happen is, all the good people, all the good NGOs who want to do something, they do it on a Saturday, and they invite you. If you don't go, they get upset. So you go. And if you are there, exceptionally good NGOs, they did it on a Sunday. So we went on a Sunday also. So, all your Saturday, Sundays were taken like that. But then one Sunday came, I was posted in Lucknow, and one Sunday came, it was, I had no appointments whatsoever. So I said, today we celebrate. I told my son also, we are going to have fun. So I wore a very nice Kerala colorful lungi and a very nice Lucknowi kurta. And I was going and took my best book and switched on the TV, and I was about to relax. That time we didn't have mobile, so the landline rang. So I took the phone, I went and took the phone. He said, is that Augustine Valiath? I said, yes, sir. Then he said, and then I said, who is on the line? He said, I'm Chandrajit Yadav speaking. So I said, Chandrajit Yadav was a senior minister in Mrs. Gandhi's cabinet. He said, yes. And I said, Chandrajit Yadav, who is the MP from Azamgarh? He said, yes. So I said, and then I said, yes, sir, what can I do for you? He said, where do you live? I want to come and see you. So I said, sir, agar you are Chandrajit Yadav, then why would you come to see me? I will come and see you. Where are you? So he gave me an address in a place called Dalibag in a posh area in administrative people live there area. So I opened my lungi, opened my kurta, I put it into more formal dress, took my blue Maruti out, and I drove to Dalibag, and I went there. I opened, he himself opened the door. And then I sat, he asked me to sit down. Then I asked him, sir, what can I do for you? So he asked me, did you come to Azamgarh recently? I said, I did. Then he said, so what did you come for? I said, I came to ask the Panchayat members, did education ever work in Azamgarh? So he said, what did they say? They said one particular IAS officer was the CDO, the Chief Development Officer, it worked. So he said, what did he do? He said he made surprise visit to schools and hospitals and health centers. And he punished everybody who wasn't there. So I said, okay. So then I asked him, now, what do you want to do? He said, I am a member of parliament. You know that I'm from there. And then he said something very touching. He said, Zindagi ke bache hue din तालीम बच्चों के तालीम पर बिताना चाहता हूँ. So I said, oh, wonderful. But then, that old journalist, that time I was a UN diplomat. I should have been polite to people and diplomatic in my conversation and all that. But that day, that old journalist whom I had killed woke up. And I was quite, so I told him, Chandrajit, ये बताइए, इतने साल आप पावर में थे, अचानक ये एजुकेशन तालीम का बुखार कहाँ से चढ़ा आपको? And I thought you would get upset, you would throw me out of the house. No, he didn't. He was far greater than I believed. He was very humble. He said, Augustine, I can tell you what happened. Recently, somebody shook my head, my brain, and he used the Hindi word, Beja hila diya kisi ne. So I said, what happened, sir? So he said he was on that hopping flight from Delhi to Khajuraho, Khajuraho to Varanasi, Varanasi to Delhi. So he said he got into a flight from Delhi, and 50 people got out of the flight from Khajuraho, and another 50 people got in. He had to go to Varanasi. The new people also had to go to Varanasi. So in this, a middle-aged woman in her late 40s came and sat next to him. And they were all speaking a language which he thought was Arabic, which wasn't Arabic, but he thought it was Arabic. So then he thought he would introduce himself and he would slowly embrace. After all, she's a woman, so he thought he would embrace her a little. So he said, hello, ma'am, I am Chandrajit Yadav. I am a member of parliament. I am a minister. I was a minister. So suddenly this woman started laughing and laughing loud and laughing angrily. And then she said, you said you are a minister? He said, yes, ma'am. You said you are a member of parliament? He said, yes, ma'am. Then he said, then what are these children doing? Then he said, which children, ma'am? Then he shouted even more. The whole flight could hear it. See, he doesn't even see them. He doesn't even see them. And then he said, ma'am, but what are you talking about? He said, my dear man, ever since I came to India, I've only seen children doing nothing. They are all over. They are all over the street. They are here, they are there, and they are doing nothing. They are not in school. They are not at home. They are just doing nothing. And you call yourself a minister. You call yourself a member of parliament. Shame on you. So he said, my head shook. My brain shook. And when I came out, I started seeing children. I never saw them before. They were there everywhere, all over Varanasi. And they were all over the street. And they were doing nothing. So what kind of country have we created? So he said, I was so shaken, Augustine sir. Then I came to Azamgarh. Somebody said, UNICEF se koi aaya tha. That's why I came to see you. I wanted to meet you. So, I also felt very strongly about him, about his honesty, about his humility, and saying this all to me. So, and I repeat this story, not as Chandrajit Yadav's story, it's a story of everyone. We don't see our children. We don't see our children. We don't speak about them. Our newspaper has no place for them. I went with a well-written article to one newspaper in Lucknow and said, this is analysis of what is being done for children, very authoritatively done. So that man looked at me and he said, Kal Shishu Din hai kya? So I said, no, tomorrow is not Children's Day. He just right in front of me put that into the waste paper basket. So that is our respect for children. We don't write about them. They are not in the media. They are not seen anywhere. And their concerns are not addressed. So that is my motivation. So my motivation is to keep children in the minds of people who matter, people who think. I have no other motivation. And I have, and I worked in Bihar and UP where I have no children. The children belong to Bihar and UP. They were not my children, but they paid my salary. So it was important for me to put them up on the minds of people. So that is my motivation. That still is my motivation.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it is really moving, and it has even, made me think as to what you said, that actually as journalists, I have been a journalist, I have been into media education, but certainly whatever you said just now, and when I'm trying to look back, I also find you are absolutely correct. We have never paid attention the way we should have done it for the sake of children or for the benefit of the children, or to ensure a due place to children in our society. I'm completely in agreement with you. Sir, at this point, we move to the last segment of the program, wherein we invite the student to ask questions to the guest. So I call upon the students in this session, those who are interested in asking any pertinent questions to Sir, to Mr. Augustine Valiet. So please ask your questions.
Good afternoon, sir. I thoroughly enjoyed your session today. And I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You talked about traveling and interacting with a big number of people. And of course, like when you are going around talking to so many people, there will be people with many different ideologies and cultural backgrounds. So how do you keep up with them in terms of your writing? How do you make sure that your writing is appropriate for them and doesn't offend them?
That thought of my writing to be appropriate to any group has not occurred to me. I write what is down there, what is the truth. And if I try to minimize it or change it either way, it doesn't help. It has to be about children. It has to be on children. It has to be, it has to be what is relevant to them. So, but there are many ideologies in this country and many kind of political parties, and none of them cares about children. So we can equally oppose all of them. None of them cares really. And nobody spends enough money on children, nobody invests enough money on children. So we don't have health and education in our country. If you think we have, some of us get educated, you did. But lots of our, we don't get to get educated. Nor do we, when we fall ill, we don't get treated either. So there is a lot more needs to be done on health, on education, on children, and all that. And there are lots of things happening in the country. I have very good public health friends. I'm not blaming them. But in spite of them, it is not happening. And there are very good journalists who write about a lot about children. I used to have a colleague, not a colleague, a friend in what you call in Lucknow. She invariably wrote about children, though she writes for all the media. But the writing about children is not sexy enough. We need to write other subjects. So we all give that up. Then we get into, in Lucknow, we try to introduce something called a children's hour every Friday, where somebody related to children or somebody would come and address. And a lot of media used to participate in it. But it used to happen as long as I was there. The moment I was born, it was gone. So it doesn't happen in Lucknow Press. Thanks to Lucknow Press Club, they hosted something like that for Friday after Friday after Friday. But when I went, it's gone. So that is the tragedy. Now with online, maybe we could do it. We could do it online. We could do it for all of India.
Yeah, so sir, there is another question by Nitika. Nitika, please ask your question.
A very good afternoon, sir. Thank you for
Very good
coming on the seminar.
Yeah, Nitika.
Yes, sir. Sir, so my question to you is we all know in the country like India, even adults are hesitate to ask questions or to share what is there inside them, right? So how can we effectively communicate with the children on some of the social issues, or like we know about their feelings, what they are feeling, like how can we actually communicate with them effectively?
That's a great question, Nitika. You know what is the heart of communication? The heart of communication is listening.
Right.
You sit down with children. You first let them. You first let them tell, and then you will. So many ways of communicating them will open up. They will come up with so much, because we are in a hurry. We have questions already planned. We go there and we don't get anything. But you sit down and talk to them. They will tell you so much, and they will also tell you how to solve their problems. But we adults don't have time. So we need to have listening forums where children can tell you what they really think. And the heart of listening is, heart of communication is listening, and heart of listening is compassion. So we have that in mind. Listening, if listening happens, the rest of the communication also happens.
Very well answered that. And then there is another question by Anisha. Anisha, please ask your question.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Anisha.
Sir, as you said, you have been to many states, and you have been visited Bihar. It is considered as a most highly productive state, but it is also very less developed. So what is your take on it?
On Bihar?
On Bihar.
Oh, yes. Bihar is my favorite state. And Bihar, I one day even wrote, how could change Bihar? How could we make Bihar a paradise? There's just 8-9 things that they need to focus on. And it has all the riches. It has such fabulous, vibrant people. And God has given them all the pilgrim centers of, you can invite, all the Buddhists in the world want to visit Bihar. All the Sikhs in the world wants to visit Bihar. That is where the Guru, 10th Guru was born. All the Hindus want to visit Gaya because it is 124 generations of wholesale liberation. Dunya mein kahin nahi milega aapko. So, and all the Jains, and Jains are not poor, all the Jains want to come to Bihar. We just made domestic tourism, pilgrim tourism, our business in Bihar. I think we will have a lot of people coming and a lot of people going, and that alone will bring so much of riches to us. Bihar is also the spice capital of India. Nobody knows this. The spices capital of India. So there, and Bihar is a very fertile land, and there once upon a time in history there was an intellectual summit, and if there were TVs at that time, all the TVs should have been there, but there were no TVs. So it happened in a corner of Bihar, and it was between Adi Shankara and Mandan Mishra, and they wanted an umpire who would judge equally, without prejudice.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to look very far. Mandan Mishra's wife was that intelligent. That is the caliber of Bihar's women.
Yeah.
So what are we complaining about?
So we are running short of time. Okay. So the last question will be from Rishabh. Rishabh, ask your question first.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Rishabh, BGMC Secretary.
Hi, Rishabh. Rishabh is a beautiful name.
Thank you, sir. So my question is, interpersonal and group communication are considered to be the most effective form of communication in offline mode. But after pandemic, everything is online. So how we can communicate online effectively?
That's actually a challenge. What you've said, where do you get that authenticity of one-to-one communication or a group communication. So this is something that we have to keep struggling how to get there. We don't have the answer yet because the technology is new, but will it take the place of one-to-one communication or group communication? I don't know. I don't think so. But so we have to find out to sharpen the communication. Now think about it, Rishabh. If I was in a classroom with you, how much more fun it would have been. Or we could have divided, we could have had small group discussions, we could have spent a little more time after the interval. So all that is not happening now. So, but I think that's a long quest. We are right at the beginning of it. So don't seek a digital answer yet, but keep struggling. But also be sure that we are missing it.
Yeah.
So it needs to be done. The other option, of course, is there must be a local person whom that person can speak to. We fortify our community mobilizers in such a way that this conversation can be carried on.
So thank you, Augustine, to be with us for so long and delivering such a passionate talk that it was so impressive. I personally was so affected by your words, your anecdotes, and everything that you told us all. And it would have been a great lesson for all the students who have been in this session, and the kind of questions that were put up to you. That itself is an indication as to how passionately these students were listening to you, and they would have definitely got today all such things which in earlier speakers or in earlier sessions they would not have got. And we know personally, I personally know, because there are so many common friends who keep on telling about you. The work that you are doing, that's really phenomenal. So the final thing that I would like to ask you, can you tell us something about the book that you are writing on children, this book is about, and when will we able to read this?
I haven't started writing a book yet. That is our mutual friend Ujjwal suggesting to me that I write one. In fact, we had coffee day before yesterday together, and he said, you are writing this book. And when Ujjwal says you, and I will not say no. So, but I think it's a good suggestion. The things I spoke, the things, and there are lots of interactions with children that I would really like to be put into paper. So maybe I should sit down and write it, or at least I should speak into some recording machine and make sure that it is written. But I would really, what he told me was like Gandhiji wrote Experiments with Truth. You write one called Experiments with Children. But I think idea is very good. And I have heard so much, as I said, I have sat down with children.
No, we also wish that you write, and because that's something which will be for forever. So anytime, anybody can go through it and can get to know all the good work that you have done, and also can get inspiration as to what all good things need to be taken up by an individual for the sake of children in this country. So thank you.
Just 1 second, since you mentioned a book, let me tell you, I've just completed a book called The Soul of UNICEF, in the words of Jim Grant. It is not a book written by, it's a book that I have harvested from what James Grant has said. It was an enormous vision, and I think it should not be lost in this all this crisscross. So I've compiled that, and I'm going to publish that soon. So I will, and it has so much to do with communication. So much to do with communication, because he was a strong believer in communication. So that and I will certainly take Ujjwal seriously, because he's one of my best friends, well-wishers. So I will take it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you all those who were there in this session and contributing to making this session a success. Thank you all.
The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects, Nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.